Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Interviewing the Legends. I'm your host, Ray Shasho. Caligula's Horrors, hailing from Brisbane, Australia, are a leading light in contemporary progressive metal. Their colorful and emotional music spanning influences as diverse as King Crimson, Steely Dan, Opeth, and Jeff Buckley has forged a deep and lasting connection with fans across the globe. In 2020, Caligula's Horrors released their most focused and potent artistic statement yet, Rise Radiant, an uncompromising exploration of the human experience dressed in vivid musical color and virtuosic performances. The brand new release by Caligula's Horse is entitled Charcoal Grace and is born of the static hopelessness that the pandemic forced upon the band and indeed much of the world these past few years. It is an album reckoning with the experiences and outcomes of this time, geared ultimately towards catharsis and moving towards a more hopeful future, we all hope. The title, Charcoal Grace, is described by the band as the grim allure and strange beauty and stillness, silence, and loss. At the center of the album is a beautiful four-part title track suite, a 24-minute opus that pushes deeper into the album's foundational themes, connection, alienation, and the ways humanity acts under duress. Musically, it covers every facet of the band's vocabulary, from heavy and dense orchestral, accompanied intensity embodying the song's darkest lyrical ideas, through to soft acoustic-driven moments and introspection. Charcoal Grace will be officially released on January 26th, but the album is available, of course, for pre-order. Please welcome lead guitarist, musical director, producer, songwriter for Australian progressive metal band Caligula's Horse, who is also a music educator and holds a doctorate in music from the Queensland Conservatorium, Sam Vallen, to Interviewing the Legends. Hello, Sam.
Hello, Ray. Wonderful to be here, mate.
Man, you got quite a resume, don't you?
Yeah, a little bit. It's only as you read it back, I'm feeling a bit self-conscious now.
Actually, you should be a lot older than you are for all those.
Well, I mean, you can see the age in my eyes over the last couple of years. But
I love the album, and I've listened to a lot of the other albums by you guys. I think this is the best one.
Oh, fantastic.
And here's what I said about it. I said, Charcoal Grace by Caligula's Horse is a masterful melodic masterpiece, a brilliant arrangement of innovative instrumentation and mesmerizing vocalization. Phenomenal and unprecedented. I can't talk today. I'm sorry. Precedented.
That's all right.
I gave you guys 5 stars for the album because I thought it was
wonderful.
Oh man, it's ingenious. It really is.
Oh, thank you so much. It really does mean a lot.
How long did it take you to put this thing together?
Well, truth be told, it was a pretty hard one to put together. I think, like prior to the pandemic, we were in a pretty good rhythm of kind of touring and writing and recording. But the pandemic hit, and all of us are locked in our homes for this long period. It became pretty hard for us, whereas maybe some other bands found it kind of easy to actually reconnect with being musicians in that time. Like we weren't on the road, we weren't, getting to know Rise Radiant, our previous album, in that kind of context. So frankly, it took a while before we even had the wherewithal to say, look, we're just going to accept that everything we've done up until now has kind of been put on hold. It's time to just start writing a new record. And even in that context, like it was quite hard to sort of say, well, what's the album going to be about when we start writing it? What's meaningful to us? So somewhere around, I'm going to say probably late 2021 or so, we made the decision we were going to start working on something. But for a while after that, we really only put together just scattered ideas. Like we didn't really have a direction. We just wanted to play around with things, find our way in a really kind of holistic sense. Once we actually started writing it in earnest, it was easier then. It just took a while to get over that hump. But I think most of it was probably written between, say, early 2022 and I guess when we kind of finished producing it, like essentially mid-year this year. Yeah.
The structure of the album reminds me kind of like a Dark Side of the Moon, but you guys said it was not a concept album. Is that true?
Well, yeah, it's a weird one. Like you consider an album like Dark Side of the Moon as a concept album. I think it is. It usually is considered to be one, but it doesn't really have a narrative, right?
Right.
Whereas, say something like Thick as a Brick or something is a bit more of a concerted effort to be a continuous thing. I mean, in the sense that Dark Side of the Moon is a concept album, I would say this probably is a concept album. It's very thematically driven. It has a bunch of qualities that are kind of consistently founding most of the ideas on the record, but it isn't a narrative. So it isn't, the kind of tight story type of concept album that a lot of people use the term synonymously with, I suppose, if that makes sense.
Sure.
It's probably an even more confusing answer, to be honest.
I got to tell you, man, Jim Gray, he's an incredible singer.
Monster, isn't he?
He's a monster. I noticed some. I read the comments on YouTube when from your fans and stuff. They were mentioning, especially on the first track, because he's got a different way of singing. It's not blaring, He's got this kind of a soft.
It's quite soft at times.
It's very soft at times, and that's what some of the guys were on YouTube were noticing, that they love you guys, but they were noticing it's a little soft, and they thought, oh, this guy should be blaring. I understand. That's his style, and to me, it mixes very well with the album. I think it's great.
Yeah, it's a very deliberate choice. We kind of take the line that in music like ours, which is deliberately not commercial music, it's not music that needs to do a certain thing, i.e. it's a lead vocal and it's a bunch of things supporting that. We take the line instead that every element in the band has a time to shine and a time to kind of sit back, and that includes the vocal.
Right.
But that does mean that in certain parts, like take a good example might be like the verse in Golem, where Jim is basically whispering. He's not even really singing.
Exactly.
And the idea of that being kind of blaring to me, which I think some people expect to hear since the kind of pop approach to vocals has become a little bit more ubiquitous nowadays, I just don't particularly like that. None of us in the band do. We like the idea that sometimes it's really present, sometimes it's less so. Sometimes it's more of a blend of elements, and then sometimes a certain element, i.e. the vocals, focal. But I just don't like the idea that it always has to be a certain thing. I like it to be dynamic and exploratory. When I say I mean, obviously this is the whole band working on these things. But that's kind of the idea behind it. I've seen a couple of people saying, the vocals should be louder in these parts. And I say, yeah, fair enough. It's a valid opinion, but I like it to be something that when it is loud, it really feels meaningful. And that's true of all of the elements, not just the vocal,
I agree with you, because it makes the song or the track sound more surreal in a way,
It sort of comes from that idea. Like I remember hearing this kind of approach first taken by bands like Tool. Like listen to something like Lateralis. There's a really quiet vocal, much quieter than we're sort of doing here. But this idea that if you put headphones on or listen in a really nice sound system and you focus on that vocal while it's immersed in everything else, you get this wonderful kind of 3D immersive experience, because it's not so loud that everything else disappears behind it. But again, it's a matter of opinion. Like some people will prefer something, that's perfectly valid, but this is our artistic approach.
Yeah, I agree. To me it's mesmerizing.
Yeah,
you get lost with the music and the vocals combination.
Well, thanks for saying that, because that's exactly what I hope it does.
Yeah, I mean, I used to love Robin Trower, and Jimmy Dore, the singer Robin Trower, I kind of had that kind of approach as well.
Yeah, totally. I hadn't actually considered that. Yeah, definitely.
I love it. Well, the first track, The World Breathes With Me, that to me sounds like a James Bond title.
It does. I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, it kind of does.
That's going to be in the next Bond movie, by the way. Okay. It's an epic track.
Royalties, though. As long as they do, that's fine.
It's to me it's this is the new word now. It's usually found in prog, but cinematic.
Cinematic is a good way of putting it. You know what? It's the big difference actually on this record than what we've done in the past, which is that we do actually have like a live orchestra, and The World Breathes With Me is a song that uses that quite a bit. Cinematic's a perfect way to describe it. That's kind of what we were thinking. In other words, the heaviest dynamics should be sweeping and epic and so forth, not just heavy. So that's kind of the idea.
The lyrics are incredible. Did you write all the lyrics? Oh
So
my
the lyrics are
gosh.
mostly Jim. So Jim and I have a
All
kind
right.
of collaborative approach where I tend to take most of the music, he tends to take most of the lyrics, but we work very holistically. Like we don't just create something and then put something on top of it. We tend to work section by section and together. So it's a very mutual process, both of those elements.
Very intricate, man. It's not
Mm,
nothing simple here at all. You
mm.
know, I mean, I'm going to read some of the lyrics on that track. So this is who we are, focused to want to watch the sorrow, the short leash, and the lead, the suicide, the addict, the voyeur, the dead. Are you comfortable? Did you do enough or nothing? Hand to heart and lungs and barely breathing. I mean, it's very
Mm,
poetic, you know?
You see how angry it is as well. I mean, like
Yes.
us kind of, reckoning with the experience during the pandemic. Not even the pandemic itself. Like Australia went into lockdown very early and we kind of disappeared for a period there. But we all remember the experience we had looking at our community around us, kind of just immediately everyone becoming very selfish, like people hoarding toilet paper when they
I
really
know.
didn't need to do that,
It happened
but
here
as
too.
soon as
Yeah.
catastrophe hits, people sort of get that way. So, one of the big elements, one of the big themes in the record, I guess going back to, is it a concept album or not? One of
Yeah.
the themes throughout the whole thing is just this idea of being an artist and looking out into a world that is unfamiliar, like looking out into a world that you thought was one thing, but then you realize is actually something else. And it's hard to not feel kind of cynical in that world. So funnily enough, the world breathes with me, although the passage you read there from the first verse is quite dark and quite
Mhm.
I guess, attacking of that kind of culture and community we see around us. It does actually eventually pull back at the end of the song to this acceptance that we all went through this horrible thing together. That's the one saving grace of it all. We all saw it. So we all know now what we can do to maybe help each other, or what we can do to maybe, be part of a better global community. And I'm hopeful of that, but,
Sure.
it awaits to be seen, I suppose.
The pandemic, like war, brings the best in lyrics, in music. It really
Yeah,
does.
totally.
So there are some good
It
things, I
does.
guess, about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly, like, this album is very different because of the experience we had. Who knows what we would have written if it weren't for the pandemic?
Exactly. I mean, just I breathe and the world breathes with me. That's James
Mm.
Bond, man.
It's a bit James Bond. Better give him a call. I'm gonna get some of those sweet James Bond royalties. That'd be
I'm
nice.
telling you, man, you deserve it. I mean, Chris Cornell got it. You guys can
Yeah,
get
that's true.
it. He did a great job, by the way.
Yeah, definitely,
It was
definitely.
probably one of my favorite Bond themes.
Yeah, it was killer. It was
It was
awesome.
killer. You guys got hit with a double whammy because you had the big
Mm,
fire. That was
we
so
did.
sad to see the animals, suffering like that.
Yeah,
Also,
what was interesting? Like, so we wrote the previous album, Rise Radiant, like throughout
right.
kind of late 2018, 2019. And we wrote it as this really like deliberately hopeful album because, we were in this amazing place. The world was in this amazing place. We do all of
Hmm.
this touring, seeing all of these things and kind of reflecting on them. And we released that album, or at least we finished that album basically as the fires began. And then as
Really?
that sort of moved directly through to the pandemic. So it was really interesting having this album that was deliberately hopeful kind of come out in this, really kind of just horrible time. We didn't intend for that to happen, but, we've heard from a lot of people since that it was actually quite important that, we didn't hold back on releasing it or something like that because, let's face it, the pandemic is not the best thing for any kind of commercial
Yeah,
release.
exactly.
But it became, kind of emblematic of that period, like especially Australia, because as you say, we did get that double
Mm.
whammy, like half our wildlife dying
Oh my
overnight, and then
gosh, that's
that.
horrible. That was so
Yeah.
sad.
Oh, it's crazy. Our drummer was
Yeah.
actually up in the mountains, surrounded by a lot of the fires as well. Like that, it was something that was quite close to home for a lot of us.
I saw a lot of heroes though saving the animals, which was cool.
Oh man, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, see, that brought out heroism. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of the pandemic, maybe it's easy to be more cynical about, but yeah, the bushfires were an interesting one.
Gollum, that was the next track. You got an
Mm.
official video out on that, and the reviews are incredible. I mean,
Mm.
you guys look like superstars on paper.
In theory,
In
in
theory.
theory. And then you talk to nerdy old me sitting in my nerdy old room. Yeah,
It's
the reaction for Golem was great because Golem was like as a song, you'd know this for sure listening to the whole album. It's kind of out of place on the album in a lot of senses. Like
right,
it's a lot more stripped back. It's a lot more just kind of rock, oriented.
right.
Like it doesn't have all the orchestra and all of that stuff. So we were a bit self-conscious about putting that out first because it might not give you a great impression of the record, but it was very heartening to see how positively it was received, and I think it set up a good platform for the rest.
It sure did. And then out of nowhere, you come up with this 4-part
10 minutes.
suite, which is,
Yeah.
reminds me of Dark Side of the Moon, the way
Mm,
the tracks kind of go into each other in a way.
mm.
I love it, man. It's incredible. I loved every song, every track on this album was great.
Thank you.
You break it down with Pray, which is Charcoal
Mm.
Grace 1, another smooth, low key vocals, which is great.
Even more so actually in that
Yeah,
verse. In fact, the dynamics I think throughout that song probably have some of the softest approaches to voice that Jim has ever really had an opportunity to explore. I think it's awesome. In my opinion, I love that stuff.
I do too. I don't like the blaring voice. I'm like you, screaming and this and that.
Mm. Yeah, it can be cool for a contrast, but I think like my I guess underlying feeling about creating any kind of music is I love to have those extremes.
Yeah,
Like if you've got a big blaring, belty kind of yelly voice, that's very powerful, provided it has the kind of contrast of some soft stuff
sure.
to provide the drama.
That's
Jim is
right.
just, I mean, I don't think you're going to find a better singer in that regard, in my opinion. He's one of my best mates, but
Mhm.
he also blows me away every time we work on this stuff. He's so capable of sort of moving between all of those extremes and retaining such a strong identity while doing so.
Yeah. And I do want to mention there is a great guitarist on this album as well.
Hope it's not me. Oh no.
Yeah, there's another David Gilmour in the making here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I do love David Gilmour. He's a big hero of mine.
Yeah. And again, Charcoal Grace 2, another Bond title, A World Without.
That's I'm gonna say that's even more Bond title.
I know. That's great, man. You must have been watching a Bond movie or something.
I don't know, man. Like it feels like maybe we were, but who knows?
And then Vigil, Charcoal Grace 3 moves into that, and then Give Me Hell, the 6 minute and 13-second track. It's a powerful track, great guitar, and an awesome ending.
Very guitar heavy one, that one.
Very
I'll
guitar
tell
heavy.
you a funny little piece of trivia about that. So, I mean, like
Okay.
the whole suite is 24 minutes. And
Right.
as you rightly point out, it sort of references the history of like the side length song, right? And like classic prog. Think
Right.
stuff like Echoes by Pink Floyd,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, right? But we realized, well, I realized while I was kind of creating what would bring together all of the themes at the end of Give Me Hell, I realized that there was a bit of a problem ahead of us, which was that we can't really, without having severe limitations to your sonic frequency response, you can't really go over kind of 22, 23 minutes on a vinyl side without it starting to really cost you bass and cost you width and stuff like that. So I remember at that kind of 20-minute mark being like, oh shit, I have to wrap this thing up. I've got to work out how to pull it all together and make it end in a way that feels fulfilling. It genuinely blindsided me a little bit because I don't know, that song could have just kept going, I think, if I hadn't worked out a way to pull it together. So funny little piece of trivia. Yeah, that's why it's 24 minutes, not
That's
longer.
why. There's always an interesting story behind the music, always.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Sales and then Storm Chaser. You have I guess a soft acoustic guitar ending to Sales, right?
Yeah, well, Sales is an interesting one. Sales was one of the last ones we wrote, and I remember being kind of self-conscious about it as like a musical approach, like the kind of prog rock type of sound that it has.
Right.
So I remember writing a bunch of that. Jim and I were kind of working on some stuff, and I remember actually saying, "Hey, like, is this something we can get away with? Can we kind of do something as sort of ballitic as this?" The guys really loved it, so I pushed ahead writing it. But what ended up becoming the notable part was that the outro actually takes on the intro of the Storm Chasers theme, just in a different key. And as soon as I made them kind of, connect like as one seamless listening experience, it really justified it for me. I think it's a lovely lull on the album, like a lovely pullback of the dynamic so that we can get heavy again when we get to like especially
exactly. This is a perfect um recording for vinyl, right?
Yeah, totally. That's exactly
Yeah,
right.
it's
Mm.
set up for vinyl perfectly,
Yeah, and then, you know what? We put a lot of thought into that as well. Like
Yeah.
it's very important to us that you can flip the side and have that wonderful kind of dynamic experience that covers everything that we do, and hopefully covers everything that you want to listen to before you flip it and interrupt the flow for a moment. It's lovely. It's like chapters. That's how I
Yeah.
see it.
I don't know. I may go out now and buy me a big amplifier, a Marantz Sansui or something like that,
Yeah,
like the old
nice.
days, and some big speakers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, you definitely can, but like because we put so much thought into the vinyl sequencing, I mean, even if you're just listening to the album digitally, you probably get a sense for how it would feel like where you're
Sure.
actually taking that moment to turn the record and so forth.
Oh,
Yeah,
incredible. And then you finish the album with Mute, 12
it's my
minutes.
favorite song.
Oh my God, it's cinematic. It's an incredible tune. I heard
Mm.
bits of I can never say the band name, Evanescence,
Oh yeah,
the band Evanescence. I kind of
yeah, I
hear a
do.
little bit of that in there. I
Mm.
heard a little bit of an Arabic kind of feel
Yeah,
musically.
definitely some of that Phrygian dominant kind of like Middle Eastern type of
Middle Eastern,
tonality.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for
I've
sure.
I've got some Middle Eastern background, so I noticed it right
Mm.
away. Um,
Yeah.
great song, track. Talk about this one.
So it is my favorite song on the record. Like it's the song that probably had the greatest chance. It's going to sound kind of weird, but that had the greatest chance to fail as we were writing it. Like it's very ambitious in a lot of ways. Like from having kind of the vocal intro through to having the orchestra as a real feature of a lot of that song. There's the kind of flute solos throughout and so forth. It was a song that like it could have just been a bit of a disaster and not really worked out, but as we dug into it more deeply, it became obvious just how much of a vessel for very personal reflection on the pandemic
Mhm.
it became. So the title Mute refers to two different kinds of muteness. It refers to Jim's own personal experience. He had some vocal surgery and had a
Oh,
concern that
really?
he might have his voice
Oh,
change or he might lose
wow.
his voice. So he muses on that a bit in the lyrics. But the other muteness is exactly what the intro describes. Like, I stood on a mountain, I had nothing to say. And that was
Hmm.
exactly what we felt at the start of the pandemic. Like we had built this career over almost a decade where,
Yeah,
we were at the absolute height of what we could do. And then everything
yeah,
stopped.
yeah. I read you
So
guys were kind of freaking out, I guess, right?
yeah, man, it was hard to be in a band in that time, and I don't know how well we really did being a band in that time. Like a lot of bands, especially European bands who had a lot more government funding and stuff, seemed to do really well, but we struggled a lot. So that's Mute ended up being this wonderful chance to actually zoom in for a moment. A lot of the album has this very big picture kind of
Hmm.
element to its lyrics, whereas this is much more personal and much more direct. And as one final interesting trivial note, Mute actually at the very beginning, this is going to sound insane when I say this, it's a 12-minute song. It was originally going to be the album's intro track. It was going to be like 2 minutes long and
You're
go
kidding
directly
me.
into The World Breathes with Me.
How did you
So
pull
we
that one off?
well, that's the thing. I didn't pull it off. So I remember getting a couple of the ideas together, and it works beautifully as kind of an intro. If you think the start of the album, like imagine opening with the I stood on mountains, like all of the vocal stuff, but it became super obvious within, I don't know, maybe the first month of working on it, that it just had too much meaningful material to be
Right.
condensed into an intro. And as we started digging into it, as we started like happening upon that, as I said, that very zoomed introspective element, we just realized that it had to be a song in its own right. So the idea of placing it at the end of the album shares a lot of material with The
Hmm.
World Breathes With Me. Like it has a lot of the same musical motifs, and it creates this kind of cyclical effect if you're listening to the album on repeat. But I mean, I guess there's probably enough trivia about it. I just love the song. Like it still kind of moves me, and I think that's usually one of the only elements that I can judge a song by, because I've heard it so many times. By the end of writing it, still sort of does something for me. That tells me that it's good, it's worthwhile.
Yeah, exactly. Can you play the whole album live? the way it is? Are you going to play the whole
Um,
album and not stop like Pink Floyd did?
we're not going to do it on this run, but I mean, at some point, it seems almost necessary. Like we've
Yeah,
kind of done, like sets where we've played albums in full in the past, especially our
right.
previous concept albums, River's End and In Contact.
Hmm.
It'll be an ordeal. No, it's a very hard album to play. So we'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it, I suppose.
And you're going to have visuals too, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's so much to it. It's very cinematic. We're gonna have the James Bond film in the
Yeah,
background.
yeah. Why not? Invite Roger Craig over, you know. Oh man, the album is structured perfectly, you know. Who did the producing and engineering on the album?
That would be this guy as well. So I
Really?
tend to wear,
Whoa.
I tend to kind of wear all the hats that aren't
Yeah,
explicitly worn by other people.
great.
Yeah.
So you can take on responsibility with no problems.
Yeah, it's more that I just because I am like a producer. It's part of my day job, my yearly job when I take on projects.
Yeah.
But I sort of have this, like, Caligula's Horse to me is this it's an outlet for all of the creative things that I do. That's
Hmm.
what I love about it. So the whole idea of kind of producing an album like this, it lets me explore concepts I don't get to do when I'm working with clients and I have to just get it done. So
Exactly.
I guess what I'm getting at is it's another fulfilling aspect of the creative process in the band.
Okay. I don't think you did this one. How about the album cover?
And that's true. I didn't do that one, and man, am I stoked with it. I love the album cover. So it was done by a guy called Chris Panettiere,
Okay.
phenomenal artist. He's based in Texas. I think he's based in Austin, but I hope I haven't got that wrong.
Yeah.
But he's a guy I just came across from some line and kind of like watercolor stuff he does, like very akin to kind of cover art for like Baroness albums and stuff like that. I remember it catching my eye, but that not really being the approach we wanted for this. And I remember asking him, because he had a bunch of like oil stuff he'd done very early on in his career, or earlier on, should I say, asking him whether he could kind of do an oil painting for us. And, he was really enthused by the concept. We started playing around with the idea of sort of the broken countenance of a person, like, who are you when you don't know who you are anymore. And he basically gave us a draft of what you see on that cover as his first response to the big brief that I wrote him. And it blew me away. I love it. Like, I think it's such an incredible distillation of the album in an album cover. So it is an oil painting, and that was a
Okay.
deliberate thing because, obviously AI art is kind of a big controversy right now. And,
Right.
I love the concept that it is boutique, like a
Right.
human created it, much like the music. Humans create the music. So it was important to us that it was something that had the feel of a real work of a human hand. You know what I mean? So it is an oil painting, and he also obviously painted the back cover, which we've used as the single artwork for The World Breeze with me. But yeah, Chris Panettiere, incredible artist, incredible author as well. He's just a fascinating guy. I encourage anyone listening to this, check out his stuff. He's really cool.
Yeah. To me, when I saw the art, I said it should be hanging up in a gallery.
I wish I
Is that
had the
good?
physical thing. I
Yeah.
have the painting of the In Contact album, like 2017 album. I have that painting hanging on my
Do
wall in
you?
the other room. But unfortunately, Chris did want to keep this painting, and I respect that. He wants to use it for galleries and things like that. It makes
Yeah. I hope you
perfect sense.
use them again in future albums as well.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, he's done a bunch of merch designs for us as well, which
Oh,
are
good.
outrageously cool too. So
Really?
you'll see those on the US tour coming up.
Has he done shirts on
Yeah,
shirts?
yeah. So
I
he's
I
done
might
us
have
a
to buy a
couple
shirt.
of oh, you should check them out. They are so
Okay.
cool. They're in the sort of style that he does a little bit more that kind of watercolor and line work. But
Yeah.
he's done us 3 or 4 like unique charcoal grace oriented drawings, illustrations, which are going to be the shirts. I think actually the album pre-order has a couple of those available as well.
Okay. Good.
But yeah, I just love the guy. I think he's so talented, such a fantastic artist.
I really hope you guys make it huge in the US. Okay.
Me too.
You deserve it. And
Thank you.
you got this tour starting in January, right? 31st.
Very end of January, yeah.
My old stomping grounds. I'm originally from the DC area, and I moved down here to Florida, the Union Stage. I wish you guys would have played the 930 Club too, because that's a lot of people make it at the 930 Club.
Gotcha. I'll have to note that down for next time. But
They've been around
man,
a
like
long
to
time.
say, Yeah, to say we're excited for that is such an understatement. I mean, we are old hands at touring, but we've
Yeah,
always run into roadblocks with the US, be the 2020 tour, landing right in the middle of the pandemic or
I know.
whatever. So we've been there a couple of times, but only to play festivals. So the fact that we can finally come over and do a proper headline tour and make our way around as many states as we can in those kind of 3.5 weeks, it's going to be special. Like, I'm so excited for it.
You got Union Stage, you got the Underground Arts in Philly, you got Boston, Bright
Mm,
Music Hall, New York,
mm.
Montreal after that. And you got, it's a big tour. It's gonna be a great
It is a
tour.
very big tour, yeah. I mean, we we did the first tours that we'd done for several years. Like this year, we sort of went back to Europe and stuff after the
Right.
pandemic, and man, it's easy to forget just how important touring is to like being an artist.
That's
Making
right.
those connections, making the music personal. So the fact that we can finally do that on the back of this record in the States at long last, incredible.
You don't have any Florida dates, I see. And
No, I
and
remember it being. I remember for some reason it being quite hard to find something that stuck there. So for
huh,
whatever reason, it just didn't happen in the end. But I guess I apologize for that. You're Florida based, right?
yes.
Hopefully, it's not too much of a drive. I don't know. I don't know the states at all.
Well,
But
the venue you'd be perfect at is Janice Live, and that's in St.
Janice
Pete.
Live.
I'm in the Tampa Bay area on the west coast of Florida.
Okay,
Yeah, Janice Live. That's
I'll
that's
note it
where all
down. I
the
can check it out next
that,
time.
yeah, that'd be perfect for you guys.
Yeah, awesome,
Yeah,
awesome.
but yeah, of course, I like to see you guys also at the Hard Rock, places like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And the House of Blues would be great.
Of
You
course, yeah.
know,
The classic venues.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm friends with a fellow Aussie musician. I
Mm.
wonder if you know. Do you know Ben Craven?
Ben Craven. The name
Yeah,
rings a bell. Who's he from?
he's I don't know exactly what city he's from, but
Mm.
he's incredible artist. He's a prog rock artist. And
Mm.
like you, I really would love to see him make it in the States, but again, it's very difficult. Um,
It is, yeah.
especially
Ben
like you said
Craven.
with
I'll have to check him out. Again, the name rings a bell, but I can't put a face to it.
his last album was Monsters from the Id, and he did a song
Mm.
called Die Before You Wake. Another Bond.
Yeah, that's you know what? This is the prog thing apparently.
Everything sounds like Bond nowadays,
Yeah.
but it should have been a huge hit. And
Mm.
especially when Top 40 was big. I was a DJ back in the
Yeah.
late 70s. I did Top 40,
Okay.
and that should have made it. And it's just such a shame that a lot of people here in the US don't know. That's why I like to,
Well, it's tough,
you
Like
know,
the thing is, especially as an Aussie, because like any tour that we do is incredibly expensive just because we
right,
travel so far. But yeah, the States is hard to tour. Like the visas alone make it
right.
so a lot of bands can't really do it. When we had to cancel the 2020 tour, we lost tens of thousands of dollars just in
Mm.
visas. So it's one of those things where I feel for small bands who have to kind of get to that point. We're one step above being a small band, like just to where it's possible to do. But even so, it's hard. So, everyone wants to play the States, but it's a challenging one.
And you guys got so many followers too,
Yeah, well, we do well in the States, like in terms of
Yeah.
our demographics and stuff. We know people are waiting there for us. It's just it's always hard to get there.
Another good band from Australia, Unitopia. Good
Yeah,
prog band.
Utopia are awesome.
Really good prog band. I
Mm,
know Jason Salford. He's from Australian Pink Floyd, keyboard player.
mm.
I interviewed him a long time ago. I was a big fan of Billy Thorpe. Did you know
Oh
Billy
yeah,
Thorpe?
yeah. Of course, yeah. It's Aztecs and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
What a history there. Somebody should do a documentary on him, man. He was
Yeah, it's
great.
funny that like more people don't know about the kind of like we call it the pub rock kind of era
Yeah,
in that time. Colored balls, all of those kind of bands.
right.
Because I've sort of written some academic stuff about that in my other life as a music academic. It's a fascinating era and like an era that was quite unique and distinctive as well, and yet
Hmm.
didn't really do much outside of Australia beyond AC/DC. They're the one
Right.
band that
Everybody
kind of
thinks of
moved beyond their
AC/DC.
station.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Brian Johnson's got a house here, not too far from me.
You will see it's telling that he's living in the States
I
rather than
know.
Australia, isn't it?
Well, they call Florida the Australia of the United States because
Just because you guys
Florida.
have like alligators, right?
Yes,
Whereas we have
alligators,
crocodiles.
crocodiles.
Yeah.
We've got pythons now, tons of pythons.
Yeah, you guys actually have scary fauna there, much like us. Whereas I know that's a bit rarer elsewhere. Look, I would be more scared of bears if I was living in the north of the States, anyway.
Yeah, you never know what a
How big do
bear's
your
going to do.
spiders get is the real question.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of gators. I mean, I've played golf with gators, you don't bother
Nice.
them, they don't bother you,
Yeah, yeah.
Here was a thought. One of your fans on YouTube was mentioning that you guys should do a package tour, and they mentioned Arcane, Leprous, and Haken with you guys. Put a package deal together. I always thought it'd be great to do a package deal, especially with prog rock, and do a tour like that.
We've actually been talking about doing something like that for a while. So actually, like Haken and Leprous did a package run in the States. However, I think it may have been pre-pandemic, but I remember when they did that, it worked out well. They're, we're pretty tight with those guys. We sort of see how all that stuff goes and whatever else. But we're currently talking about that. So, we're already in talks, obviously, for how we follow up the February tour. It's, the thing is, these things have to be planned so far in advance to be able to work out. And I think, the next step is going to be to do something a bit more like that, like something where we've got a couple of bands who are in similar places in their career who we can really capitalize on, that shared and that crossover audience. So I guess like short version, yeah, I'd love to. It sounds good. It's got to, make the logistics work.
Exactly. I was happy to see Haken tour, and they did a lot of the smaller venues like you're going to do, but it was nice to see him come over. I interviewed Ross Jennings.
Ross is such a sweetheart. He's a fantastic guy. We caught up with him earlier in the year in Southampton in the UK, where he's based. Yeah, when we were there.
And he's done, a lot of, especially the prog bands, they're related to so many other bands. I mean, they've got like 3 bands going at the same time, like Ross does and Neil Morris and
tons of projects. It's funny,
Portnoy.
We're kind of exceptions there just because Australia is so far away. It's hard to just kind of, make those things happen, make those connections happen. We know most of those people, but we tend to exist in our own little circle for whatever reason. Maybe it's because, time differences are so shit and whatever else.
You ever think about moving? I mean, for the band's sake,
Yeah, we've toyed with it in the past. Like the thing is that the band's trajectory prior to the pandemic was quite different than after. Like we all had kids through the pandemic and all of that kind of stuff. It's become a little bit it's become a little bit more difficult to even kind of humor those kind of ideas. And we won't do it now, but there was definitely a time like around, maybe 2015, 16, 17, that kind of like period where we were establishing ourselves, where it was definitely on the cards. And we talked about it. I mean, for what it's worth, like where we're at as a band now, the limitations of getting overseas to tour are much less than they've been in the past. Like, we don't have to fight tooth and nail to get a US visa. Like it's pretty easy for us now. Whereas in the past, we'd have to obsessively prove that we're big enough and all of that kind of stuff. You don't make it easy in your country, but all of those things kind of have gotten easier as we've established ourselves a little bit more. So we're pretty happy being where we are and, enjoying our sunny Christmas period. I don't know. You live in Florida.
We get the same thing.
Sunny. Yeah, exactly.
We got the same thing. Yeah.
You're Northern Hemisphere in name only, right? Like it's not as snowy as up north.
Exactly. It's always warm here. I mean, if it gets down to 50 degrees, we freak out. I mean, it's like
totally. Us too.
What are some of the other countries that really love you guys? I mean, where are you big and what areas of the country or the world?
The thing is, like, the States have really been an outlier in terms of where we've been able to get touring. So, we've toured about as many European, UK kind of, that let's say European continent countries, like, for many, many years, and developed some pretty amazing audience kind of relationships in those places. But I think one place that jumps out, like, as you asked the question, that jumped into my mind almost unavoidably is Chile, for some reason, in Latin America. We've managed to headline there twice, and they're some of the biggest shows we've ever played. Like, it's just incredible. Yeah, people just come for miles around. Like, music means something very different to, I think, Chileans. I find it a lot in Latin America in general. Like there's a lot less of a self-consciousness around loving music for those
Hmm.
people. Just to give you an example, we sort of joke in Australia about this very Commonwealth idea of like, you can never show how enthusiastic you are about something. You've always got to be cool.
Right.
Whereas in Chile, you get the sense that people just love you with every part of their being. Like they just enjoy music and they're not self-conscious to tell you that they do. And what an incredibly refreshing thing as a musician to see that. It's wonderful. So that's one of those places that I remember when we first went, we had no idea what to expect. Would 10 people come to our show?
Yeah.
That kind of
Yeah,
thing. But
exactly.
instead, it's just, huge clubs just full, like sold out front to back kind of vibes. It's just very, very special. So that's one audience that, maybe a lot of bands don't really think about, but it means a lot to us.
I'm friends with Mark Farner. I don't know if you remember Grand Funk Railroad.
Yeah, of course.
He just did not recently a live album from Chile because
Yeah, well, there you go.
he said the exact same thing you did. They were so energetic. They were even
Yeah, it's
doing
special.
these football kind of chants,
Oh,
and
the football chance. See, that's one of these things. No one ever warned me about that. Like you go there and you sort of, lights go down. You're about to enter, and instead of silence, you hear a fucking soccer chant. It's one of the
yeah,
most amazing things. Like I remember just getting goosebumps. Like being like, "What?
I love that.
So cool, so
Yeah,
cool."
maybe you should do a live album from Chile.
Might have to next time we go, yeah. But I mean, the thing is, like, it's worth saying. Obviously, everywhere we tour, there are special elements to it. And I mean, a couple of times we've been fortunate enough to play the Pro Power Festival in
Mhm.
Atlanta. I
Right.
mean, like as a reception there, that was something entirely unexpected as well. We meet fans over there who've been waiting for us since the very beginning, and unfortunately, it's a struggle to get to the US. Like it's taken us that amount of time. But that's an audience in late January throughout February that I can't wait to actually meet, because I understand also with the States, culture is very different in every state, right?
Yep.
Like we're going to see a lot of different kind of vibes across the heartland as we would on the coasts and all that kind of stuff. So that's going to be incredible to find out about.
I admire you guys because you go through the tough times in the beginning. And
Mm,
one guy you played some gigs with, Devin Towson, I had on the show.
mm,
I
Oh,
love Devin.
big
He
hero of
told
mine.
he told me that he says I remember playing a gig when the only light we had was a beer light, back hanging up on the wall.
I've
That
played
was
those gigs, man. Yeah.
he went through the
Devin is one
trials
of
and
my biggest
tribulations.
heroes.
Yeah. Do you remember
Yeah.
those days when you first started out?
So okay, I'll tell you what. I remember playing a gig. So way back in the start of our career, we would take anything we were offered because we were absolutely nobody's there. We just needed to try and play some places and get some
Yeah.
fans. I remember playing one gig. It was a small festival. We played, like the corner of a pub, and I remember the power going out to the entire stage circuit. So like our entire rig just
Oh
dying
my gosh.
and it just being acoustic drums. And I think for maybe my amps were still on and it was just like backline and lights and stuff. And just sort of just thinking, wow, like they don't even have a circuit breaker. We can't get power back on. I guess that's the end of the gig. Cool.
Wow.
Like the thing is, we've all had those terrible gigs at the start. I'm just glad we don't have to play those kind of gigs
Exactly.
anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh man. I've talked to some of the guys from the Commodores,
Mm.
Lionel Richie. They all used to sleep in the
Mm.
same bed together at hotels when they first started out.
Yeah, we've
you
done
know.
that too. Or just, sleeping upright in your chair, like in the van.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good
And
days, good times.
yeah, and of course Ian Anderson used to hide underneath the desk of, I think it was Chrysalis Records. I guess the head of Chrysalis Records, waiting for the next gig, and making sure he sprouts out saying, we're ready," that kind of thing.
Ready to go, ready to go. Yeah, totally.
I, I just want to mention some of the great other songs by the
Mm,
band, and some getting big hits on YouTube is "Slow Violence," your
mm,
official
mm,
video, which is incredible.
mm,
"Rust," another big song from the band. "Marigold,"
mm,
"Ocean Rise," "Firelight,"
mm.
"Dream the Dead," which is one of my favorites, I think.
It's one of
Um,
my favorites too. I
yeah,
love playing that one live.
it's a
Love
great
it.
song, man. "The Tempest,"
Mm,
and Valkyrie, and also "Salt," another great
mm,
tune, and "Turntail." You guys have done so much great music, but I really believe this album's my favorite. You
Well,
know,
that means a lot because, I guess I hinted at it before, but this is not really an album that has a kind of commercial element to it.
exactly.
Whereas maybe
Yeah,
Rise Radiant or maybe Bloom, like some of our previous albums, were a bit more concise and a bit easier to digest, I suppose. So, it's very heartening to hear people respond well to it, because the fact is, it is so emotional and so personal that it's an album that I couldn't possibly judge its quality. I just don't know. You know what I mean? I'm
right.
too near it. So to hear you say that, you think it's our favorite, it's very, very heartening, very encouraging. Thank you.
I mean, the views you guys are getting on your videos,
Mm.
why aren't you as big as AC/DC?
Well, because the problem was we hit the peak of our career in
I
2020.
I know. That's a shame.
So unfortunately,
Yeah.
it's one of those, it's kind of 2 steps forward and 10 steps back in
Exactly,
this case.
exactly.
But
It's all right.
we'll kind of get back there.
You'll
I
get
mean,
back.
we'll never be as big as AC/DC, but at least we can, hopefully be that little modest Australian band who can come to the States every year or whatever, and
Yeah,
have a good time.
exactly. Here's your final question, and I ask
Yeah.
this question to everybody. I get some really interesting answers. If you had a Field of Dreams wish, like the movie, which is one of my favorite movies, to perform, collaborate with anyone from the past or present, who would that be?
It's a really good question. See, I think of a lot of the kind of artists that I've come up worshipping. Like, especially in that classic prog era, a lot of my favorite musicians kind of come from that time. Guys
Right.
like Robert Fripp or Frank Zappa or people like that. But I don't know how fun a collaboration would be with some of those very kind of like band leader oriented types. I reckon if I was going to say like collaborating with one artist who I think I'd kind of take the most from and learn the most from, I'm going to say Paul McCartney in the late 60s. Like, he's a huge hero of mine. At that time, it felt like, he and the Beatles, of course, as a whole, could just do no wrong in terms of how much they were pushing music forward.
Right.
I feel like it would have just been an amazing thing, maybe even not to be a collaborator, but just to be a fly on the wall to some degree. But you can see, like, a lot of my answers would be inclined to be in that kind of late 60s, early 70s, sort of the period where rock went from this kind of pop style music to being this very expansive, very creative and very artistically driven style. So, you could probably choose a couple of people from there, but Paul McCartney is definitely one of my biggest heroes from that time.
That's the number one answer, by the way.
Oh, yeah? No way. Really? Am I that predictable?
Number one. Yep. Excellent.
There you go. Well, it's probably for good reason.
Yeah. Who I could see you writing with is Ian Anderson, kind of. And, his new stuff is great.
Honestly, I could have picked him. Like, he's an absolute hero of mine as well. Like, just the whole kind of trajectory of Jethro Tull. Like, like those, especially the kind of Thick as a Brick era, like the really proggy kind of stuff.
Yep.
I think from that era, it's probably the music I listen to the most. I absolutely love that band and love his songwriting and everything. He would have been like a very close answer for sure.
Yeah. And you could be the new songwriter for King Crimson going forward. You got that style.
Yeah, well, maybe. I mean, like, I've stolen so much from Robert Fripp over the years, so I guess that's probably fits.
Yeah, I'm a big Crimson fan from way back as well. Sam,
Awesome.
Have we covered everything? Is there anything?
I think we have. It's felt
we
good.
miss
I've got
anything?
to dig into some stuff I haven't really talked, about with any interviewer yet. So it's been wonderful.
Very good. Well, looking forward to the tour. If I can help in any way to get some Florida dates, I will do that for you. Just let me know.
Awesome.
Yeah,
no worries.
I want to say very special thanks to Roy Avon of Royal Avenue Media for arranging this interview today with Sam Vallen.
Thank you,
He's a good guy.
Always, Roy.
He's great, man. I love working with that guy.
Yeah, he's great.
You can pre-order the new album, Caligula's Horse, entitled Charcoal Grace, officially released January 26th, which is the day before my birthday. Very
really?
cool.
It's our bassist's birthday on January 26th.
So there you go.
Maybe
27th.
you guys are sort of, incarnations of one another. I don't know.
Aquarians rule.
So it goes.
You can listen to the 10-minute opening track, The World Breathes With Me, starring Roger Craig. That's on YouTube. And or the video for Gollum, which is also on YouTube, which is incredible. You can pre-order the album. Should we go to your website?
Yeah, website's probably the best place because you can get, wherever your locality is, there'll be a pre-order for the nearest store to you, as opposed to US people trying to get from the Europe or vice versa.
Right. www.caligulas'horse.com. You guys are on Facebook as well, Twitter, Instagram. Of course, you got your own YouTube channel, and also visit Inside Out Music.
Yes, yeah, they've got a lot of our stuff.
Oh yeah, Sam, thank you so much, man. Good luck on the tour. It's going to be fun. Be careful out there.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, up north where the roads are slippery, I hope we're okay. But Ray, it's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much for the interesting questions in the chat, mate.
Keep in contact. And like I said, I really mean it. If you need any help with some Florida dates, I know a lot of the promoters and venue people. So
well, thank you. I'll look into it. I'll have a chat with our guys.
Okay. Sounds
wonderful.
Good. Thanks,
right,
Sam. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, man.
Yeah, you too. See you, mate.
All right. Bye.